This wasn't supposed to be the scene everyone kept talking about. Out of every emotional confession, every dramatic argument, and every heartbreaking moment the Other Bennet sister has given us so far, somehow it was just 10 quiet minutes between Mary and Tom that completely stole the episode. And honestly, that's the part nobody saw coming, because nothing extraordinary actually happens. There isn't a confession, there isn't a kiss, there isn't some life-changing declaration that suddenly turns everything upside down. Yet somehow, those few minutes leave a bigger impact than scenes that were designed to make us cry. That's what makes this relationship so fascinating. It doesn't fight for your attention, it quietly earns it. Before you even realize what's happening, you're smiling at every little conversation, waiting for every tiny glance, and wondering how two people who barely raise their voices have become the couple you can't stop thinking about. But here's the real question. If 10 simple minutes can make fans this emotionally invested already, what happens when these two finally realize they're falling for each other? The biggest surprise isn't that Mary smiles around Tom, it's why she smiles. For most of her life, Mary's expressions have always felt careful. Every word she speaks seems measured. Every reaction feels controlled, almost like she's constantly reminding herself not to expect too much from the people around her. She's become so used to standing behind everyone else that disappointment has almost become normal. When you're ignored long enough, eventually you stop expecting to be noticed. That's the quiet tragedy Mary has been carrying since the beginning. It isn't loud enough for everyone to recognize, but once you notice it, you can't stop seeing it. Every time someone interrupts her, every time another person's opinion matters more, every time she quietly accepts being pushed into the background, another piece of her confidence disappears. That's exactly why Tom feels different from everyone else. Not because he's trying to rescue her, not because he's treating her like someone who needs fixing, but because he treats her like someone worth listening to. And believe it or not, that's much rarer than love. Think about every conversation they've shared so far. Tom never rushes her. He never finishes her sentences. He never speaks over her just to prove a point. Instead, he gives her something almost nobody else does: time. His attention never feels forced. His curiosity never feels fake. When Mary speaks, Tom doesn't look for the quickest opportunity to respond. He actually listens. That tiny difference changes everything, because listening tells someone something words never can. It tells them what you're saying matters. For someone like Mary, that's almost unfamiliar. And maybe that's why these scenes feel so satisfying to watch. They're not built around romance, they're built around respect. The strange thing is that respect often becomes the strongest foundation for love, even when neither person realizes it's happening. That's why these 10 minutes never feel rushed. Every smile feels earned. Every laugh feels natural. Every moment of silence somehow says more than an entire page of dialogue. The writers understand something many romance stories forget. Attraction doesn't always begin with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with comfort. Sometimes the most important feeling isn't excitement, it's relief. Relief that someone finally understands you without asking you to become someone else. Mary has spent years quietly adapting herself to everyone else's expectations. Around her family, she's expected to stay invisible. Around strangers, she's expected to stay polite. Around society, she's expected to stay ordinary. But around Tom, something changes. She doesn't seem like she's performing anymore. She doesn't spend every second wondering whether she's saying the wrong thing. Her shoulders relax. Her expressions soften. Even the way she looks at him feels lighter. It's almost as if she's meeting the version of herself that never had to apologize for existing. And that's a beautiful thing to watch. Because confidence rarely appears all at once. It grows through tiny moments. One conversation, one shared smile, one person who makes you feel safe enough to stop pretending. That's exactly what's happening here. Tom probably doesn't even realize the effect he's having, or maybe he does. Maybe that's what makes his behavior so interesting. There are several moments where he looks at Mary just a second longer than necessary, not enough for anyone else to notice immediately, but long enough that viewers begin asking themselves questions. Why does he keep searching for her reaction? Why does he seem genuinely interested in making her laugh? Why does every conversation between them feel like it ends too quickly? Those aren't accidents. People naturally move toward the people who make them feel understood. Whether Tom admits it or not, that's exactly what's beginning to happen. And what's even more interesting is that neither of them appears to be chasing romance. That's what makes the chemistry feel real. Nobody's trying to impress anyone. Nobody's delivering dramatic speeches. Nobody's forcing emotional moments. They're simply enjoying each other's company. Ironically, that's often when feelings become impossible to stop, because love rarely announces itself. It hides inside routines, inside conversations that suddenly become your favorite part of the day, inside smiles you don't even realize you're waiting for. By the time you notice those feelings, they're already grown much bigger than you expected. Mary doesn't know it yet. Tom probably doesn't know it either, but viewers can already see the pattern forming. Every interaction adds another piece to a puzzle that's becoming harder and harder to ignore. And once those pieces finally connect, can either of them honestly pretend this is still just friendship? The moment that keeps replaying in my mind isn't even the biggest moment between them. That's what surprises me the most. Usually, the scenes people remember are the loud ones, the confession, the argument, the dramatic reunion. But with Mary and Tom, it's the quiet details that refuse to leave your head. A small smile, a brief pause before answering, the way they naturally drift into conversation, as if the rest of the world slowly disappears around them. Those tiny moments shouldn't be powerful enough to stay with us, and yet somehow they're the scenes fans keep replaying. Why? Because they feel real. That's something television rarely gets right anymore. So many romances try to convince us that two people belong together by making everything happen quickly. One emotional conversation suddenly changes everything. One dramatic rescue creates instant love. One confession fixes years of emotional distance. But real feelings almost never work like that. Real feelings grow so slowly that sometimes the people experiencing them don't even notice until it's already too late. That's exactly the journey Mary and Tom seem to be taking. What's fascinating is how naturally Tom fits into Mary's world without trying to take control of it. He doesn't arrive acting like the hero of her story. He doesn't make promises he can't keep. He doesn't try to become the center of her attention. Instead, he quietly steps beside her. That difference matters more than most people realize. Mary has spent her entire life surrounded by people who expect her to adjust herself for everyone else's comfort. Around Tom, she isn't being asked to become someone different. She's simply allowed to be herself. That may sound like a small thing. It isn't. Sometimes the greatest gift another person can give you is the freedom to stop pretending. You can actually see that freedom beginning to appear. Mary's expressions become softer. Her answers become more confident. She doesn't hesitate quite as much before speaking. She laughs a little more easily than she used to. None of these changes happen overnight. In fact, if you aren't paying close attention, you might miss them completely. But once you notice them, they're impossible to ignore. That's brilliant storytelling. Instead of telling us Mary is changing, the writers allow us to discover those changes ourselves. We become part of the journey. We don't just watch her confidence grow, we feel it growing alongside her. And that's exactly why these scenes hit so differently. Tom plays an important role in that growth. Not because he's changing Mary, he's reminding her of the person she always had the potential to become. There's a huge difference between those two ideas. One suggests someone needs saving, the other suggests someone simply needs to be believed in. Tom never acts like Mary is broken. He treats her like someone whose voice deserves space. That simple choice changes everything, because confidence doesn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. It usually grows because somebody keeps proving that your thoughts matter. Mary has probably spent years believing her opinions were less interesting than everyone else's, years believing she should stay quiet because someone else would always have something better to say. Those beliefs don't disappear after one pleasant conversation. They stay with you. They whisper doubts every time you open your mouth. They tell you not to expect too much.
but every conversation with Tom quietly argues against those doubts. Without even realizing it, he's challenging